Thank you. May I call the room to order? Thank you.
Shortly after midnight, on the 3rd of August 2018, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission announced Emmerson Mnangagwa as the winner of the 2018 presidential election.
Mnangagwa Emmerson Dambudzo of ZANU-PF Party is therefore duly declared elected president of the Republic of Zimbabwe.
With 50.8% of the vote, with Nelson Chamisa as the runner-up with 44.3%.
Over 50% of the ballots. His main opponent, Nelson Chamisa, polled about 44%.
A few hours earlier, representatives of the MDC Alliance had announced that the party was rejecting the presidential election results as the results were being announced, citing irregularities.
I represent my candidate, Nelson Chamisa, and I'm the chief election agent of the party. The results that have been announced have not been verified by us. I did not sign those results, so the results are fake. The results have just been printed and they've not been verified by the polling agents. And we are the polling agents, we have not done that. Polling agents verify the results from Thank you very much.
The party chairperson was to be later prosecuted and convicted of disrupting the announcement of presidential election results.
Morgan Komichi has been convicted for violating the Electoral Act after he allegedly gate-crashed the Zimbabwe election.
4 days after announcing Mnangagwa as the winner of the presidential election, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission released a compact disc with an Excel spreadsheet with a supposed breakdown of the results per polling station. Surprisingly, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission had now changed the results announced by its chairperson, Priscilla Chigumba, on the 3rd of August. Instead of the 50.8% given to Mnangagwa on the 3rd of August, the result had now been changed to 50.67%. This was a smoking gun.
It's D-Day for Nelson Chamisa's team. Lawyers for the opposition MDC party hope to convince Zimbabwe's constitutional court that last month's presidential vote was rigged.
Our party won the elections. We believe that the court is going to do
The MDC Alliance challenged the declared election result in the Constitutional Court. The legal challenge was dismissed in a controversial ruling by Chief Justice Luke Malaba.
The court has dismissed the opposition MDC's electoral results challenge. This means Emmerson Mnangagwa is the duly elected president.
The written judgment remains unavailable a year later.
Malaba handed down the ruling in Harare a short while ago.
In the result, the following order is made. The application is dismissed with cause in terms of Section 93, subsection 4.
However, despite the dismissal, the documents submitted in that court case provide incontrovertible evidence that the July 30 election was rigged.
Is duly declared.
Those documents form the center of this investigation. In those documents, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission claimed under oath that its officers verified at its National Command Center 10,985 original V11 forms and entered the information into an Excel spreadsheet. This over 2 days. This claim that the Electoral Commission verified V11s at the National Command Center is at the center of EXCELGATE because, as will be demonstrated, it is not possible for V11s to exist at the National Command Center. This is a smoking gun. Once it is accepted that there were no original V11s at the National Command Center, it becomes clear that the Electoral Commission lied under oath. And a secondary question arises: where did those documents come from? In the same court documents, Emmerson Mnangagwa admits to the existence of an election server, but rejects the results held in that server, saying it had been hacked. These are serious allegations made by Emmerson Mnangagwa under oath. A number of questions arise as a result. Firstly, how did Emmerson Mnangagwa know that the election server had been hacked and the results held therein amended, since ZEC did not issue a public statement to that effect? Secondly, why did Chief Justice Luke Malaba refuse Nelson Chamisa's subpoena to expose the ZEC server, despite Emmerson Mnangagwa accepting in his court papers that the survey existed. To understand why claims by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission that it verified original V11s at the National Command Centre are false, an illustration of the electoral process and the life of a V11 form is necessary. V11 forms are used to record results at a polling station. After voting, a V11 copy is posted outside the polling station. Another copy of the V11 is put in a box, together with the election residue from the polling station. That box is sealed, with the signatures of the presiding officer and polling agents affixed to the seal. Another copy is put in an envelope, which is sealed before the presiding officer and polling agents affix their signatures to the seal. At this stage, there are now only 2 V11 forms in ZEC's possession. One is sealed in the box with election residue, and the second is sealed in an envelope. The sealed ballot boxes with election residue from each polling station in the ward and sealed envelopes with V11s from each of the polling stations are brought by ZEC officials under police escort to the Ward Collation Centre. The materials are accompanied by the polling agents who have fixed their signatures to the seals. When the ward election officer receives the sealed envelopes with the V11s, he causes them to be unsealed and opened in the presence of the polling agents who affix their signatures on the seals. When all the sealed envelopes from the polling stations that make up the ward have been unsealed and opened, the ward election officer, assisted by polling officers, with the polling agents observing, adds the votes for the ward election for councillor, constituency election for member of the National Assembly, and national election for president from the V11s and records the results on a V23A form. Once the results on the V23A form are verified, the presiding officer declares the winner of the ward election as the duly elected councillor. The V23A with the results is posted outside the Ward Collation Centre, where the results of the declared ward councillor, the ward votes for the constituency election for Member of Parliament of the National Assembly, and the ward votes for the national election for president. An original copy of the V23A form with the results of the ward votes, together with the V11s that came from the polling station in sealed envelopes, are put with the residue of election material from the Ward Collation Centre into a box. The box is sealed, and the presiding officer of the Ward Collation Centre, as well as the polling agents assigned to the Ward Collation Centre, affix their signatures on the seal of the box. Another copy of the original V23A form is put into an envelope. The presiding officer and the polling agents affix their signatures on the seal of the envelope. The sealed envelope and the sealed box with the election residue from the ward centre, which include V11s from the polling stations in the ward and an original copy of the V23A form from the ward, along with other electoral material from the Ward Collation Centre, are taken to the Constituency Command Centre under police escort, accompanied by the polling agents whose signatures are affixed to the sealed box and sealed envelope. It is important to note that at this point, there are no more V11s to speak of. All the V11s are now sealed with the election residue and can only be opened with a court order. At the Constituency Command Centre, the V23A forms from the various wards in the constituency are unsealed from their envelopes, and their results recorded onto V23B forms. It is these V23B forms that, according to the Electoral Act, must be verified at the National Command Centre. The questions that arise are simple enough. If original V11 forms are sealed into election residue at the Ward Collation Centre, how then can the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission claim that it was verifying 10,985 V11s at its National Command Centre? How is it possible that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission was verifying V11s at the National Command Centre when the Electoral Act clearly stipulates that these would already have been sealed into election residue at the Ward Collation Centre? This anomaly is at the centre of EXCELGATE and demonstrates beyond any doubt that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission used bogus V11s at its National Command Centre, where it purported to enter polling station results into an Excel spreadsheet after suddenly dumping its election server. It is not in doubt that the purportedly original V11 forms were being processed at the National Command Centre. ZEC and Chigumba said as much in their opposing affidavit. On paragraph 31 of their sworn affidavit opposing Nelson Chamisa's founding affidavit in the Constitutional Court, Priscilla Chigumba and ZEC said, As part of the verification process, the applicants' election agents for other presidential candidates, as well as election observers had full access to the original V11s and V23s with respect to the presidential election, from which they could make notes as they required.
The submissions by Chigumba and the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission are significant because they confirm under oath that supposedly original V11s were being verified at the National Command Center.
But how is it possible that original V11s could have been available at the National Command Center, unlike polling stations and Ward Collation Centres that verify V11 forms? The National Command Center verifies V23B forms that are forwarded from the country's 210 constituencies via provincial command centers. It must be said that the claims by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission are in themselves incredible, as it is impossible to verify V23 forms from 210 constituencies and V11s from 10,985 polling stations within a space of 2 days, using about 20 staff, as suggested in the court papers.
The question where the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission got its bogus V11s is not difficult to answer. The European Observer Mission noted that 19% of the polling stations that it observed did not post original V11s outside the polling station as required by the law.
EU observers reported that the results were not posted at the polling station as required by the law in 10 out of 52 polling stations observed. On this sample, ZEC did not implement the legal requirement to post V11s with the results of the presidential election outside 19% of the polling stations observed by the EU Observer Mission. The national percentage was 25% of all polling stations. The reason why ZEC did not post those V11s was because this was the avenue it was going to use to rig the election. The EU Observer Mission found that some party agents and civil society organizations reported that polling station return forms, the V11, were altered and return figures changed at ward and constituency collation centers. But even more telling, the evidence of the operation to alter the presidential result through V11s was reported by the EU Observer Mission in these graphic and shocking terms. EU election observer monitors observed ZEC officers in Makoni North completing V11 forms 2 days after election day. Even though polling staff and party agents were not present, they claimed this was due to an earlier lack of V11 forms. These reports by EU observers were corroborated by a number of online reports of vehicles that were spotted carrying ballot boxes unaccompanied by the police or polling agents. In one video that went viral soon after the election, a truck with election material was confronted by locals in Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe.
The police did not investigate this incident, nor did the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission comment despite widespread social media coverage.
It is clear, based on the electoral processes outlined in the Electoral Act, that the V11s ZEC purported to verify at its National Command Center were bogus, as all V11s are sealed into election residue at the Ward Collation Centre. It is also clear that ZEC deliberately avoided posting V11 forms outside polling stations as part of a premeditated plot to alter the results. It cannot be a coincidence that 25% of trained polling officers somehow deviate from the legal requirement to post V11s outside the polling station. On the 2nd of August 2018, the MDC chairman, Morgan Komichi, wrote to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission demanding access to the election server and complaining about the use of an Excel spreadsheet in collating election results. We are aware that the correct results of the presidential election have been inputted into the ZEC system and are in its server. Those results are a clear projection of the overwhelming winner of the presidential elections. On the 2nd of August 2018, the legal advisor to President Nelson Chamisa had a conversation with certain officials in connection with this matter of concern. A Mr. Matsuri, to whom Advocate Mpofu was referred to as the person best placed to address the concerns, indicated that ZEC is running a parallel data collection process. That parallel process includes an Excel spreadsheet on one hand and a central server on the other.
The process which the election agents are currently being asked to verify only relates to the Excel spreadsheet. The use of the Excel spreadsheet is meant, in our considered view, to provide a basis upon which the presidential result is to be manipulated, in that Excel inputs can be altered. It is of concern that notwithstanding the existence of the parallel process, ZEC has only allowed us access to the Excel process. We have been allowed to verify a ruse. That process is not auditable and cannot be verified. We point out that you had advised the nation that the presidential election results would be announced at 12:30 p.m. on the 1st of August 2018. You are correct that this should be done for the following reasons. The presidential votes are counted ahead of parliamentary votes. You could not have had results of parliamentary elections unless you also had results of the presidential election. All your actions point to an intention to manage the results of the presidential election. In view of the foregoing, we call upon you to do the following: that you immediately allow us, as President Chamisa's agents and the technical experts, access to the server so that we can audit the same and reconcile those results with what is being inputted into the Excel spreadsheet. We demand your written assurance that this shall be done, and such assurance must be given by 1700 hours.
The letter received no response.
Upon lodging his constitutional court challenge to ZEC's declaration of Emmerson Mnangagwa as the winner of the presidential election, and given ZEC's refusal to discharge its constitutional duty to be transparent about its election server and the contents thereof, Nelson Chamisa served a subpoena on Chigumba, ZEC, and ZEC's chief elections officer, as well as on the rest of the respondents, including Mnangagwa. You are required and directed to attend before the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe at Harare on Wednesday, the 22nd of August 2018, at the hour of 10 o'clock, and so from day to day until the above case is tried, to give evidence on behalf of the plaintiff, Chamisa, and also to bring with you and produce at the time and place aforesaid. All details of the ZEC server, and as it shows, the results which were inputted into the ZEC server from the 30th of July 2018 to the 3rd of August 2018. On the 20th of August 2018, the Registrar of the Constitutional Court responded to the subpoena with the following directive from Chief Justice Luke Malaba. Kindly take note, we are unable to accept the subpoena in question since there is no provision for its issuance in the pre-trial conference order issued by the Honorable Chief Justice on 16 August 2018.
Using a baseless technicality, Chief Justice Luke Malaba singularly and without reference to any law blocked Nelson Chamisa's subpoena for the ZEC election server to be brought to the Constitutional Court for legal scrutiny.
On 20 August 2018, Nelson Chamisa's lawyers wrote to Chief Justice Malaba pleading, "We have just seen the letter by the Honorable Chief Justice concerning the subpoena we issued. Pursuant to our previous correspondence, we contend that it is still an issue to be dealt with by the Chief Justice, and we kindly request an audience with him." On the 21st of August 2018, Chief Justice Malaba responded by shutting the door through the Registrar of the Constitutional Court, who advised the lawyers that, "Kindly note that we placed your letter dated 20 August 2018 before the Honorable Chief Justice, who gave the following directive. The decision whether or not the subpoena is to be issued is for the full court to decide after weighing the issue of relevance of the proposed evidence." Relevance.
Chief Justice Malaba had changed goalposts within 24 hours. The previous day, he had said the subpoena was not included in his pre-trial conference order of the 16th of August 2018. Now that had changed to an issue of admissibility from an evidentiary point of view.
The goalposts had radically changed overnight. Raising the matter before the full bench during the hearing was pie in the sky, and therefore out of the question.
The 9 judges sitting on Zimbabwe's highest court have their country's fate in their hands. They could throw the case out.
Chief Justice Malaba had succeeded to keep the ZEC server outside the hearing and thus off the case. EXCELGATE was in full swing, and Chief Justice Malaba was a cog in the operation.
ZEC, for its part, simply refused to operate transparently. In their submissions under oath, Chigumba and ZEC said on paragraph 32.3 of their opposing affidavit that, as he, Chamisa, has alleged the existence of a server, it is incumbent upon the applicant to prove his allegation. However, confirmation that ZEC operated a server with the results was given by none other than Emmerson Mnangagwa himself in his sworn opposing affidavit from paragraph 116 to paragraphs 118. The applicant confirms in his papers and affidavits of his surrogates that he was refused access to the 23rd respondent's server. We know from the 23rd respondent, ZEC, that sensitive information on our citizens, voters, had been hacked and people have been able to access that information and even amend it. What this means is that Mnangagwa, not only as a presidential candidate, but more importantly as president of Zimbabwe, acknowledges that there was a ZEC server and notes under oath, without any argument or disputation whatsoever, that Chamisa was denied access to that server by ZEC. Mnangagwa, in his own words, says that he was given this information by none other than ZEC. However, there is no public record of ZEC mentioning that their election server was hacked or that the results held therein had been amended.
Well, the people have spoken, according to Zimbabwe's Electoral Commission, but no celebrations.
Has ZANU-PF played this election very well?
There is no way that these elections were free and fair.
I think we should know why the army were transporting the ballot boxes. In one case, we even had one person pick up a ballot box and try and run away with it. That's kind of ridiculous.
There were some irregularities, missing forms from Victoria Falls on which polling agents are supposed to fill out election results. Journalists said that they had evidence that these forms had been burned.
I was talking to the head of the EU mission last night, and he said to me that he felt it wasn't a level playing field, that he was very disturbed, that violence is just in the DNA of ZANU-PF. These people are used to doing this. This is how they deal with opposition.
We must be respected. We are majority. We are the people. We are the government. We are the army. We are the air force. We are the police. We are everything you can think of. We determine who can do mining in Zimbabwe. We determine who can construct a railway line in Zimbabwe. We determine who can build a road in Zimbabwe. No other party can do so.
We categorically denounce the excessive use of force against unarmed civilians.
All of the evidence is freely available on social media and on various websites.
So far, the US State Department is indicating it is, quote, gravely concerned by credible reports of numerous detentions, beatings, and other abuses.
The president has his victory and is backed by the might of the state, but he will rule a deeply divided nation.
Violence is within ZANU-PF's DNA. And I don't know how you change that.
Part 4. Threats and Killings. The failure to post V11s in 25% of polling stations. The ZEC officials caught filling out V11s 2 days after the elections. The unaccompanied vehicles with election materials. The use of bogus V11s to populate an Excel spreadsheet, and the inexplicable refusal of Chamisa's ZEC election server subpoena did not arise by chance. These electoral infractions were part of a deliberate operation to rig the election. That operation culminated in the August 1 killing of 6 unarmed civilians by the military.
I've seen the soldiers and the trucks of the soldiers, they are holding guns.
It wasn't supposed to be like this.
People are being beaten by the soldiers. Some of our guys have been killed.
This was supposed to be the moment that proved that Zimbabwe was moving on from its oppressive past. Instead, city streets look like this, with soldiers opening fire on protesters and leaving at least 3 people dead only days after an election.
It's not safe. It's not safe. The soldiers, they're coming that side.
Okay, okay, we should go? Let's go.
So what happened?
Even before the election, Key officials had already made it clear that they would not accept an election outcome other than a victory for Emmerson Mnangagwa. On 18 January 2018, General Engelbert Rugeje threatened that the army, which had staged a military coup 2 months earlier, would repeat the widely condemned atrocities it committed in the June 2008 presidential runoff election campaign, during which 200 people were killed and many tortured or displaced as internal or external refugees. On the 21st of May 2018, Deputy Minister of Finance Terence Mukupe announced at a ZANU-PF election campaign rally in Harare East that the military would not allow the MDC leader, Nelson Chamisa, to rule if he won the 2018 presidential election.
Kuti nditi sure uti mauto vakanotora nyika kunobvutanyira muna Mugabe kuti vagotambidza chana chekutaura zvemaspaghetti road chirutaura nyaya yekuti.
On 22 May 2018, Josiah Hungwe, Minister of State for Provincial Affairs for Masvingo Province, told a public meeting where he commissioned a clinic in Chiredzi that if Mnangagwa could shoot his way into power in November 2017, then there was nothing to stop him doing the same thing to keep himself in office. On 18 June 2018, General Chiwenga told a ZANU-PF election campaign rally in Tafara Mavuku in Harare that the military's Operation Restore Legacy, which reached its tipping point on 18 November 2017, would end with the election of Mnangagwa on 30 July 2018. This was the most ominous statement, whose unmistaken message was that the military operation that started on 15 November 2017 was still underway and would only end with the election of Mnangagwa on 30 July 2018.
The authorities were aware that their plan to rig the election could trigger an uprising and had already prepared a military response before the election. This became clear from correspondence that was made public during the Motlanthe Commission of Inquiry into the August 1 killings.
It is revealing that the Zimbabwe Defense Forces and the Zimbabwe Republic Police anticipated the August 1, 2018 public disorder in Harare and pre-planned how to deal with it on 29 July 2018, before the July 30 elections. This is contained in a letter to the officer commanding Harare Province written by Chief Superintendent A. Ngwe, officer commanding police in Harare Central District, who thus prefaced his letter. I refer to my letter dated 29 July 2018 on anticipated public disorder in my district. There are approximately 4,000 protesters on the streets of the Central Business District of Harare protesting alleged rigging of the just-ended elections. On the same day, Commissioner General of Police Godwin Matanga wrote to Obert Mpofu, the Minister of Home Affairs. I write to request in terms of Section 213 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe as read with Section 37 of the Public Order and Security Act for the immediate assistance of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces to suppress violent disturbance of peace and security in Harare Central Police District and other districts around Harare Metropolitan Province. The chain letter then scaled up with Obert Mpofu writing to Vice President Retired General Chiwenga. Request for immediate assistance by the Zimbabwe Defense Forces to maintain public order in Harare Central Police District. As per our telephone conversation in the morning in connection with the above matter, please find attached self-explanatory letters from the Commissioner General of Police dated 29 July and 1st of August 2018 respectively. Further to Obert Mpofu's letter, Chiwenga then upped the ante by writing to Mnangagwa, Your Excellency, pursuant to Section 213 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe as read with Section 37 of the Public Order and Security Act, the Minister of Home Affairs is requesting for the immediate assistance of the Defense Forces for the purpose of suppressing violent disturbances in Harare Central Police District and other areas in Harare Metropolitan Province. To complete the not-so-subtly choreographed EXCELGATE plot, punctuated by a series of premeditated letters designed to create a paper trail of false legality to cover the operation, Chiwenga wrote to the ZDF commander, General Philip Sibanda. General, Pursuant to Section 213 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, as read with Section 37 of the Public Order and Security Act, the President, as Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, has authorized the deployment of the Defense Forces in support of the police service in maintenance of public order. The chain of letters is revealing. The letters motivating for the deployment of soldiers footnote correspondence from the 29th of July 2018 that somehow anticipated public disorder in Harare. The letter from Orbit Mpofu to Chiwenga was a ploy to deploy soldiers in Harare on the 1st of August 2018 as part of a pre-planned operation. Mpofu reminds Chiwenga that he is writing to him as per our conversation in the morning. The conversation between Mpofu and Chiwenga was on the morning of the 1st of August 2018, before any situation in Harare warranted deploying the police, let alone soldiers. This, along with the 29 July correspondence, gives away the pre-planned plot to deploy ZDF soldiers. This at the same time that 20 or so ZEC officers were manually inputting V11 data into an Excel spreadsheet to alter the presidential result from what was in the ZEC server.
What was the purpose of unleashing soldiers in Harare on the 1st of August 2018? Aware that EXCELGATE was in motion at the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission National Command Center, the strategy was to send a strong message to the public in general, but specifically to the residents of Harare, that any protests after the EXCELGATE result was announced would be met with deadly force.
Someone decided to bring in the army. A bloodbath ensued. 6 others were not so lucky. Their voices were silenced permanently on that fateful day.
The deployment of soldiers on the 1st of August had nothing to do with what was obtaining on the ground in Harare on that day, but was informed by the objectives of the plot hatched on 29 July in anticipation of public disorder in the capital city.
In any case, the police told the Motlanthe Commission that they called in the military because they did not have sufficient police resources and were suddenly overwhelmed. That claim is apparently false because the communication dating 29 July would have given the police more than enough time to prepare for any disturbances.
The question therefore is why the police, if they were aware of potential disturbances, were unprepared despite having made plans on the 29th of July.
There is no explanation as to where the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission got the supposedly original V11s that it was inputting into an Excel spreadsheet at the National Command Center, when the Electoral Act clearly stipulates that original V11s are sealed into election residue at the Ward Collation Centre. There is no explanation as to why the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission did not announce the presidential election result using constituency return V23B forms as stipulated in the Electoral Act. As noted in Morgan Committee's letter to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, the presidential election results are counted first before the parliamentary results. Therefore, there's no reason why the presidential election result would have been delayed when the parliamentary result had already been announced. There is no explanation as to how ZEC officials were caught filling out V11s 2 days after the election, claiming that this was due to an earlier shortage of V11s.
The Electoral Act stipulates that all election residue is sealed with the signatures of the polling agents affixed to that seal. In the absence of polling agents, this would mean that the boxes holding election residue would not have had the signatures affixed to it as stipulated by the Electoral Act.
There is no explanation why Chief Justice Luke Malaba refused the subpoena demanding access to the ZEC server. Malaba's argument that the ZEC server containing election results could have been irrelevant to an application challenging the election result
is manifestly absurd. There is no explanation how Emmerson Mnangagwa knew that the ZEC election server had been hacked and the election results held therein amended, as he claimed in his sworn opposing affidavit. There is no explanation as to how the police could have possibly foreseen disturbances over the election result before the election was conducted. Why would anyone plan to protest before the actual election? The authorities are unable to answer these simple questions because these questions are EXCELGATE.